So folks, here are my own personal comments and observations on Milton Friedman. Has anyone heard of Hugh Hefner's Playboy magazine? Oh yes? Does anyone actually buy the magazine for the articles? Oh, just as I thought. Well, I have a lot to thank Playboy magazine for, actually 4 things. Firstly, in their first issue in 1953, Playboy magazine introduced the world to Marilyn Monroe. And secondly, in a 1960 issue, there was a series of articles by Hugh Hefner titled The Playboy Philosophy. Well, that led me to enrolling as an external student at the University of Western Australia, right here, to study Philosophy 1. I liked, if that was philosophy, I liked it. Professor John Hospers of the University of Southern California was the author of the textbook we studied called The Introduction to Philosophical Analysis. And that led me to become a lifetime friend of Professor Hospers right up until his death at age 93 in 2001. An extraordinary set of circumstances led me to actually meet him, and we got to be great friends. Now, the third thing was the 1964 issue of Playboy magazine, where there was an interview with Ayn Rand, and that introduced me to her influential book, Atlas Shrugged. And number 4, then, there was that 1973 interview, the famous Playboy interview with Milton Friedman. Although I'd heard of Milton Friedman before through the various think tanks with which I was involved, I'd not fully absorbed his wisdom. And it was that punchy style in that Playboy magazine interview, which I actually have a yellowed copy of that 1973 interview. Would anyone, you'd like it? Okay. Treat that with great care. However, we will put up on our mannkal.org website a transcript of that full interview, because it's really a tremendous interview. And it's not dated. The comments are as alive today as they were in 1973. That punchy style of that interview led me and prepared me for actually meeting Milton Friedman on the several occasions when we spent time together, and I knew his style of engagement, and I was ready for it. On one occasion, I presented him with a copy of this booklet called In Support of Free Enterprise that was prepared by the Western Australian Chamber of Commerce and Industry. And it was an example of how the understanding of the enterprise system was alive and well in Western Australia. He later wrote me a delightful congratulatory letter, which made me uncomfortable because I deserved no credit for the origination of this publication. However, his letter showed that he had fully read and absorbed the content of this document, and furthermore, that he took the time. A 90-year-old busy guy took the time to write to me, and that's not bad. Now, tonight's birthday party, the 100th birthday party for Milton Friedman right here in Perth, is about personal recollections, and I'll single out one particular occasion when I was invited to attend the 20th anniversary of the Atlas Economic Research Foundation held in San Francisco in May 2001. One night of that Atlas event was called An Evening with Milton and Rose Friedman, and it formed part of the 90th birthday celebrations for Milton. Apart from his own presentations and congratulatory speeches from many notables, each of us think tank principals had an opportunity to spend some private time with Professor Friedman, and we all had our little list of questions and that we wished to ask during that valuable time together. I made detailed notes, of course, of my questions and in particular his answers, and I felt confident that when we were arranging tonight's event that I'd call on this file of mine for all the information that I needed. But probably fortunate for you all, I couldn't find the file in time. So I recontacted another colleague who was present on that occasion. It's D. Roy Murdoch, who's now gone on to be a very famous financial columnist and social commentator based in New York. He quickly responded by exhuming his own files from the event. D. Roy's memories were mainly of Friedman's focus on money being too important to be left to central bankers. And he remembered Friedman saying, "You essentially have a group of unelected people who have enormous power to affect the economy of a nation one way or the other." Friedman's proposal was simply to replace the Fed, as he called it, with a computer and consistently increase the money base by, say, 3% annually to match the expected growth of population and production. Now, D. Roy Murdoch has got some notes, and he did an op-ed on that particular theme, and that'll be up on the Mannkal website as well. Now, my own focus for that session was really on asking Dr. Friedman what he regarded as his priority challenges as the clock ticked down quickly to his 90th birthday. "Yes," he said to me jokingly, words to the effect, "by now everyone should know that inflation in the long run is always and everywhere a monetary phenomenon with unrestrained Fed pumping out the money, and that government's solution to any problem is usually at least as bad as the problem itself." And I remember talking about the current fad of the time, which was corporate social responsibility. And his comment was simple, that he didn't need to say any more, that corporations had a responsibility to make a profit for their shareholders. And he also stressed equally that the shareholders then had an individual responsibility to do with that what they thought they should be doing, and if they chose to support certain charities, so be it, because it was their money to give, not the corporation's money to give to chosen causes. He said also that as a result of having said so many things and the feeling that they were fully understood, that he's now focusing on competition in education. He said, "Our Friedman Foundation is set up to study this issue of competition in education, and we are totally against the idea of the government running the schools and allocating places primarily by address." Professor Friedman continued that if government has to subsidise anyone, it should be the consumer, that's the parents and the children, and not the producers, that's the schools and the highly unionised teachers' unions. Empower the customers, he said, and create competition, and you will achieve much better results. The purpose of having free choice, he said, is to have competition and allow the educational industry to get out of the 17th century and into the 21st century and have more involvement by doing so. That's the end of what I regarded as his quotations. Now, largely as a result of the Friedman Foundation's work so far, 13 US states and Washington, D.C. have adopted school choice programs and expanded existing laws, and the momentum is continuing to build. So, in my view, if that momentum continues, Milton Friedman may be judged in another 100 years in terms of his major achievement having been his work in revolutionising the education system. So my conclusion, on every one of these occasions when I was confronted with Milton Friedman live, it struck me is that he always had to have the last word. If anyone was interviewing him or thanking him for a speech in any way, Milton always had that last quip. In the case of D. Roy Murdoch's session with Milton, D. Roy concluded his session with a comment, "Well, that's all of my questions, thank you," thinking that was the end. Milton's response was, "Yes, it may be all of your questions, but it is not all of my answers." Milton, in my case, I concluded my individual time with him and simply thanked him, thinking that was the end. However, he then said, "And do you know what else we have in common?" Well, naturally, I was curious. And he went on by saying, "I can tell that we both had happy childhoods." That's obvious to me, he said, because a happy childhood lasts forever. Thank you.